morning and welcome back to the Return Homestead. My name is Mike and my wife Marty and I homestead 50 acres in southeastern Kentucky. Today we're working on chickens. There's been a lot going on with the chickens and we haven't been able to keep up with it very well because we've been busy on the remodel. So today I'm spending most of the day dealing with some of the issues with the chickens. Let's take a walk around and I'll show you some of what I'm going to be working on. So for main chicken housing, we have two coops, the upper coop and the lower coop. That was simply built in two different phases. We've got a run that we can contain the chickens in, but we're trying to leave them out on pasture. I do like the idea of free-range chickens. They are a lot happier running around loose, and they provide a lot of their own food if they're left out here. So we let them out on pasture every day. It's a little bit warm today. About 91 degrees, and the chickens are not real fond of being out in the sun, so they've got plenty of shade in here, and they like to just kind of lounge around when it gets too hot. One of the biggest issues that we're having with chickens right now is that we have too many roosters. That's going to happen if you go down to Tractor Supply and you buy straight run chicks. You're going to get a lot of roosters in the mix. We hatched our own, and that's why we've ended up with so many roosters. It's just what happens. And we've had to start doing something about it. You'll see some of these hens don't have any feathers left on their backs or on the back of their necks, poor things. They are just being put upon by too many roosters. And the roosters have gotten aggressive towards one another, and they always take it out when they're around the hens. So we've got to do something to reduce the numbers. So first thing this morning, we harvested our first rooster. Now this is not something we're doing just because we needed to put meat in the freezer, but it is a part of raising chickens. If you're going to have a good healthy flock, you've got to maintain a proper balance. And near as I can tell, we've got at least 8 roosters out here, and that's at least 6 too many. So we've got quite a few more roosters to go. That was our first harvest. We've never harvested a chicken before. Everything went fairly well. We've got the carcass now cooling in a bath of ice, and we'll stick it in the freezer later on. Not common to eat the roosters. Most of the time people will just slaughter the roosters, but we're going to use it at least for broth. And here in Kentucky, chicken and dumplings is kind of a mainstay. You ask any of the local boys and they'll tell you they prefer the roosters for making chicken and dumplings. So we've harvested that rooster, and that means we ended up with a lot of leftover pieces parts. So there's always that question of what do you do with all the gizzards and heart and lungs and everything else that's left over once you put the carcass in the freezer. And we've decided we're going to use it to make chicken feed. And we're not going to feed that to the chickens. That would be a little bit weird. So what we're going to do is put that in a bucket, allow flies access to it. The flies will lay their eggs and the larva will hatch. We're going to put some holes in the bucket to allow those larvae to get out. And the chickens will absolutely go nuts for those things. They will eat them up. So that's a good way to provide extra protein for the chickens without buying any additional feed. And I'm thinking I'll probably use one of these 2 poplar trees that's in their yard as a place to hang the bucket so that the maggots can crawl out and then drop down on the ground where the chickens can pick them up at their leisure. We do provide feed for the chickens, so they have free choice feed. It's something we were not sure we wanted to do. We're hoping to just free range the chickens, but I want to make sure they get enough protein in their diet that they can produce lots of eggs for us. So that's what these feeders are all about. They're just made out of PVC, called a J feeder. It allows me to put a lot of feed out at once. The chickens can come by and get it at will. The problem is today these two feeders are too low. I put them down a little bit lower because we had smaller chickens in here. All those chickens are fully grown now. So we need to raise these feeders up because, as you can see right there, the chickens have a really bad habit of pulling the feed out of the tube and just leaving it on the ground, which is fine. They'll eventually eat it, but last night we had a good thunderstorm, and I have a feeling a good bit of the feed that was on the ground got wasted because it got wet. So I'm going to raise these feeders up a little bit today. Now, even the free choice feed is no certain guarantee. We've been a little concerned about the feed we've been giving the chickens. We had found a place here in town that we could purchase feed that came from a mill down in Tennessee, and the chickens were doing very well on that, laying us plenty of eggs. But they changed that feed. They no longer make it. And so we had to switch to the new feed. I'm not even going to mention the name because we watched our egg production drop off to almost nothing. Now, it is possible that the egg production problem is coming from the number of roosters that we have out here. They're just stressing the hens too much. But I suspect the feed had a little bit to do with it. We've recently gone and found a local mill that does produce feed. So we've switched them back to a local feed, and we're hopeful that getting them off of the big agra feed will help the chickens produce more eggs for us. We've got at least 40 hens out here in the yard. We should be getting 25, 30 eggs a day, and right now we're getting an average of 8. So we got to do something more for the chickens. So we switched out the feed. We're getting rid of some of the additional roosters. And we've got one other issue we need to deal with out here in the yard today. A couple of weeks ago, we had our first problem with a predator. We came out to the chicken yard and found nothing but feathers sitting in the middle of the yard to indicate where a chicken used to be. Well, I came home from work today to an unpleasant reality of having chickens. Occasionally, predators are going to get to your chickens if you've got them out in the open. Now, this is, of course, the best place for the chickens to be. They can roam around in these tall grasses and find all kinds of insects and seeds and other items that they need for their sustenance. But that also makes them a target for the predators. And we thought at first it might be an aerial predator. But then I decided to clean the outside edges of the chicken yard, and I discovered that there are quite a few places where we've got holes where something's been digging. So it is entirely possible that a raccoon or a fox has come and found the vulnerable spots at the edge of this fence and simply crawled in and taken out one of our chickens. So I'm going to put some chicken wire. I've got a roll of 2-foot wide chicken wire that I'll lay on the ground and staple it to the ground out there to prevent anything from digging under. So I'm going to patch up these holes today. All I need to create a maggot farm for the chickens is an old bucket. This is an old drywall bucket. This is where the mud came in. It does have a good lid on it that'll help to keep the rain out of it so it won't get flooded with water. All we need to do is drill some holes in the sides of the bucket down toward the bottom. That'll allow the maggots to come out. And then a couple of larger holes up towards the top to allow the flies to get in. We'll check this every couple of weeks just to make sure it's not drying out completely, but we'll put all of the entrails, the feathers, and even some rotten tomatoes in here to help draw the flies in and make sure we get plenty of maggots for the chickens. So once you have your bucket, all you need is a drill and some drill bits, and I'm just going to pull a small drill bit out, put that in the drill, and drill a bunch of holes down the sides, and we'll put a couple of larger holes around the top edge of the bucket. reason to overthink this. These holes are just for maggots to crawl out of. You're only going to have maggots crawling out of these holes. So don't overthink it. Just get some holes put inside of the bucket. I'm going to use a slightly larger bit to put some holes around the top edge to let the flies in. Actually, we'll use a nice, good sized bit. Allow a variety of different types of flies in. And again, don't overthink it. The flies aren't going to care. That's it. We got our bucket ready. Now we're going to add some wood chips to the bucket. That's going to help to control the moisture a little bit. Also make sure we contain that moisture. Keep it inside where the maggots can make use of it. And then we'll dump everything in, mix it up, and let the flies start coming. So I filled the bottom of the bucket with some fresh pine shavings that we got from Tractor Supply. I usually use that as bedding for the chickens. Thrown in some old pieces of bark and wood chips from where I was splitting wood throughout the winter. And that's going to be the base. In the bucket here we've got rotten tomatoes. We've got the old chicken feathers from the rooster we just harvested. And in the bag is all of the pieces, parts left over from that rooster. We're just going to dump all of this in the top of the bucket, put the lid on, and go hang it from a tree. Found a rusted old fish stringer in the barn. I would never use this if I went fishing, but it comes in real handy to hang stuff. That's what I'm going to use it to do, is to get this bucket hung up in the tree. If I can find a branch that'll be strong enough to hold it high enough up that the chickens will have to wait till the maggots fall out to get to it. And all we got to do now is wait for the flies to come. As the meat and tomatoes start to break down inside of that bucket, they'll draw the flies in. We'll get plenty of maggots coming out to feed the chickens. Chickens are trying to stay out of the sun. They like this little corner as a place to gather. And we're disturbing them because we want to move these feeding tubes. I just want to raise the height on them a little bit. See if I can get them to stop pulling all that feed out down at the bottom. So I installed these tubes with pipe strapping, also called plumber's tape. It's just a metal band that has some holes drilled in it to allow you to put some screws in. It's really good for strapping pipes onto framing. So all I need to do to move this is just loosen the strap up a little bit. And I should be able to just slide this up through the strapping. Loosen it up a little more. There we go. Got full-grown chickens now, so if I raise this up, they'll be able to get their head in still, but they won't be able to pull the food out. This is just a convenient way really to keep feed in there for your chickens. And the chickens aren't picky. You can just throw the feed on the ground. But these 4 tubes allow me to put out almost a full bag of feed at one time. So I don't have to tend to that every day. Instead I can just fill them about once a week. And they'll always have plenty of food around. That should take care of the chicken feeders for now. So this fence goes up the hill from the guest house, and it is the outside edge of our chicken yard. You can see the top of the chicken run up there. And I ran a weed eater up through here about a week ago, just to clear some of the taller grass and brush away from the fence line. Predators are not likely to approach the fence line if they don't have cover, so I removed that cover. But I do want to cover up the holes that are obviously places where predators might crawl through. That may not look like much of a gap to you and I, but it is a perfect opportunity for a raccoon to squeeze in under the fence. I've got a couple of these holes, so I'm going to grab some fencing and secure it to the bottom of this fence and then stretch it out on the ground. Hold it down with some landscaping staples to keep anything from digging under. really is a constant when you're dealing with chickens to try to protect them. Trying to protect them from their own silly behavior and trying to protect them from predators that want to eat them. You never really get it right. You're always adjusting and adapting. Well, I guess if you wanted to raise chickens in a enclosed barn, put 2 million of them under a single roof, you could probably do that safely without worrying about all this. Of course, that creates other problems. I mean, if left to themselves, the chickens will take care of themselves to the best of their ability. But once a raccoon or a fox has decided he knows where the chickens are and they're good to eat, if he's gotten one, he'll come back for another eventually. So as a homesteader, you're always looking for those openings that you've inadvertently left for those predators. When you find them, you go out and close them up. But eventually, well, they find one you missed. They'll tell you where the weaknesses are at that point. Go seal those up. It's kind of what we're doing here. It may seem counterintuitive to be putting fencing on the ground. Usually you put fencing upright to hold things in or out. But we want to stop critters from trying to dig under the fence. This is the best way I know to do it. This is just a scrap piece of chicken wire we found on the property when we bought it. It's very soft wire. It's not something I would use to build a chicken run or a portion of a chicken coop, so this is a good use for it. And yes, any fox or raccoon who's determined can still get through this stuff. They could probably chew their way through. It's really just a deterrent. The fence is not that tall to begin with. It's only, 4 feet tall? So they go right over it in the first case anyway. Just trying to make it harder for them. And while I've been outside working on chickens, Marty has been inside doing more demo work. She has taken the wall out on the front side of this closet. We're going to use this closet kind of as an alcove to put the head of our bed in. We've got a king-size bed, so we need a nice big opening for it to fit into. And that'll reduce its footprint on the rest of the room. And we'll be able to use this area that used to be the shower as a walk-in closet. We'll bring that closet out probably about 4 feet from the door. And that'll give us a nice big closet in the master bedroom. The shower is all pulled apart. Marty's been pulling flooring up and we're getting ready to pull this tub out of here. So we are still making progress on the remodel along with getting the chickens taken care of. Well, we got a few things taken care of for the chickens today. We did harvest a rooster, so that got one less rooster in there, putting pressure on the hens. Hopefully that's going to help with egg production, but we'll probably need to cull a few more first. We did set up a scrap bucket out in the chicken yard, so now the chickens will have access to some fresh maggots coming out of that once the flies do their work. And we got the holes closed up along the side of the chicken yard, so the predators will have a harder time getting into the chickens. And Marty's been busy working on the remodel, getting the master bedroom pulled apart, getting ready to work on the master bathroom. We do appreciate you joining us on the Return Homestead today. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button while you're in there, and we'll see you next time.